I think AI is going to be very disruptive and continue to be part and parcel of what we do. I don't think it's a trend and then we're going to move on to something else. AI and biology are going to be married. It's going to be completely intermingled and it's going to be permanent. That's going to be a permanent marriage long into the future.
Hi, Avak. Hey, and we are very thank you really for having you here. It's always a huge effort coming down here. It's a long trip, but we are very happy to have you, to know a little bit more about what you're doing. For you to know, Avak represents Flagship Pioneer, that it's maybe the biggest venture creation platform in the world for science-based and in particular by biotech companies. So I wanted to start asking you about this model and also about your journey to become an investor. I know you said you're a scientist, you're not an investor, and there are many fund managers here, and always to know about the personal stories, it's always enlightening. So please let us know a little bit more about Flagship and yourself.
Great, gracias. Estoy muy feliz de estar con vosotros aquí. Vamos a continuar en inglés porque no hablo español. So thank you for having me. I think it's a real honor to share what we do and how we do it. My background, as you mentioned, is in science. So I did my PhD, believe it or not, in mRNA and understanding how mRNA works, but at a very basic, fundamental level. And after my PhD, I wanted to do something that had more impact, that was more applied, that went beyond basic research. And I started to look into entrepreneurship as the path forward. Large companies, I felt, weren't going to be as exciting. Academia wasn't going to be as exciting. And I joined a startup that was part of Flagship and spent 6 or 7 years in that startup. And I learned how Flagship operates. I also learned how the Boston ecosystem operates. As I worked at that company, I saw how we were at the bleeding edge of technology and science, almost fearless in what we were trying to achieve. It was a company trying to develop a completely new way to sequence DNA at very high throughput, but the technology almost didn't exist. And so through that, I basically transitioned to Flagship proper, and now I lead a team that ideates and invents new technologies, and those technologies become the basis of new bioplatform companies at Flagship.
Great. And we always talking about biotech, and today the trend and the main conversation is about AI. And sometimes people doesn't know how biotech and AI are converging, and the power of these both technologies can give to the future of humanity. What you are seeing and what you're experiencing right now with companies and with your personal experience.
Yeah, so just to maybe give some more background, at Flagship we have about 150 scientist entrepreneurs working in-house to ideate and invent new technologies. And we call these technologies bioplatforms. Bioplatforms because they're going to be foundational to the company, and they're going to generate multiple products. So they're going to be universal or generic enough to create many, many different therapeutic products or many different sustainability products, because we work in both fields. And we are constantly pushing the boundaries of what's next. Very different from academia, which is often looking at the next step. We try to go way beyond. We call it taking bigger leaps and challenging ourselves to say, how can we create something that no one's ever thought of before? If we're wrong, we can stop. If we're right, we can start to work on it, and we have the freedom to both put money towards it, but also our hard-earned time to create a company out of that concept. So more often than not, we're very, very early in these waves. We're probably before the wave, or sometimes we're creating the wave. And it's no different in this case with AI and biology. We saw the convergence coming 7, 8 years ago. Two of the ways, I guess, to simplify how AI and biology can intermingle is one, through using AI to analyze, to keep it simple. The other is to use AI to generate. Right? So one company, Celerity, has used AI to understand how cells go from health to disease. Because there's so many things changing in a cell. It's not just one thing. So a human can't really interpret that. So that's where we use AI to say, what are the differences between health and disease? And we use another layer of AI to ask, what are the predicted drugs that could take disease back to health, knowing everything you now understood or interpreted from this multidimensional change. We couldn't do that before. We couldn't do that as humans. So that company was founded back in 2017. Just so you have it.
Not following any trend.
Right, not following any trend. The other company that was founded a couple of years later was a company aptly named Generate. It was one of the first, if not the first, generative AI companies using generative algorithms to create drugs as opposed to trial and error drugs and develop them through discovery. And that was predicated on AI having learned the rules of protein structure. Many of you are familiar with AlphaFold, but then running it in reverse. So AlphaFold's good at analyzing and predicting structure from sequence. But what if you want to actually create a structure and find out the sequence? So going backwards. And so we started doing that back in 2018, 2019 and created a company called Generate. And now we have 2 drugs that are in the clinic that were auto-generated by a computer, of course tested in the real world, tested in the lab, but now being tested in humans.
It happened because a matter of necessity that you jump into these technologies. Notice you were not following a trend or trying to incorporate in your pitch that you're having AI, but you saw the improvements in the processes and so on. You know, these technologies. What do you think is coming, and what you're gonna see in the future? Improving AI in biology?
Yeah, no, great question. So the third way in which I think AIs can be really helpful now is in all of our business processes and our iteration and discovery processes. What do I mean by that? We run a process that we call exploration when we're ideating in a particular space, and then we move to prototyping the company, and then we go to building the company. Those are actually human endeavors. They're highly intensive, knowledge-based work. So imagine now you use generative AI algorithms to do all the research, to prepare your business plans, to explore alternatives, to think about the competitive landscape, to propose value propositions. All of that we used to do in our heads, and we used to do that in teams and collaboration. We can now use AI as an additional collaborator to that, and it's accelerating our ability to do explorations, protocols, and nucos. So that's, in a generic way, impacting all of our efforts. But the other thing is AI has permeated every company from a scientific standpoint, very similarly to what I said about Celerity using it for analysis and Generate using it for generation. All the companies are doing that with their own data. So if they're creating a new modality, like tRNA, transfer RNA as a modality, well, if you're making thousands of different iterations of tRNA and assessing the stability, assessing its potency and other properties, why not feed that into an AI algorithm to suggest now the next best modification you need to make the modality better, for example. But now the next leap is to create labs that are autonomous and to take all the learnings and the science and create a super intelligent laboratory. So that's a company that my partner Jeffrey von Malzahn founded called Lila. And the idea there is to create a closed loop of invention and experimentation that can create experiments autonomously, actually do them through a robotic agentic workflow, interpret those data, and decide what to do next and run the next experiment. So compressing the iteration cycle of human experimentation and invention. And they're applying it to both creating medicines, but also to creating new materials that we've never been able to imagine before.
No, that's awesome. We are really seeing a process where life is digitizing, no? All the, what we call the omics, no? The different layers of life, and that is also the process of understanding more layers of those omics that are gonna speed up much more those platforms, no? So.
Yeah, so I think omics was the first example of having a lot of digital data. A's, C's, G's, and T's from all walks of life, from all these different experiments. It's a little like the ChatGPT moment as it pertains to the corpus of the internet. So we have the corpus of genomics, right? Whether it's for cancer, whether it's for disease variation or human variation. But there are technologies missing. There are technologies missing to give AI those other modalities or other layers of data, right? What do proteins look like in high throughput, and how do they change? What does our blood do over time in high throughput at high resolution in health and disease? And so on and so on. There's many, many different ways in which AI is blind because it doesn't have the data, unlike in the realm of language. And so that's another arena that we're very keen on, which is to create new eyes and ears for AI in biology, such that we can generate the high throughput data, which doesn't exist today. Like you said, in genomics it exists. In protein structure, with about 200,000 structures in the protein data bank, we were able to train AlphaFold so that it could generate sequence and structure predictions. But that's kind of where it stopped. Why? Because we don't have the tools. So that's really the next frontier, is developing the new senses for AI to be able to hear and see biology more clearly.
We have to create the digital cell, no, to test.
Yeah, that's actually one of the holy grails of biology, is to create a cell in silico that then you can test and just throw things at. You can throw a drug on it, you can take out a gene, add a gene, increase the level of a gene, and see how it changes in response. And do that in silico. Imagine the iterations and the speed with which you can do that, and now you can make predictions about which drugs should you make versus making thousands of drugs, trying them in a petri dish, and failing 99.9% of the time. Absolutely. So that's really the next frontier.
Great. And when we talk about biotech, and it happens to us, and of course it's your focus, in general, people think about the pharmaceutical industry, the therapeutics, different therapies. But we are seeing a huge improvement in a different space using biology, and you have also companies in your portfolio thinking in the environment, that together with the pressure that we are receiving from the planetary boundaries and the need of resources that we are asking to the planet, that how we can think biology, biotechnology to start thinking about to a new way of produce almost everything, no? And to impact the planet in a good way. What do you think?
I know GRIDX is a pioneer in that space, and we do that too. So we've had a history of working on biofuels, using bacteria to create new biofuels efficiently. We now have a number of agricultural-based companies thinking about how to bring biology into the world of plants and modify their behavior so that they're more resilient. One example is Indigo Ag, which understood that there aren't only microbes in the soil. There are actually microbes inside the plant, even naturally today. And those microbes provide benefits. They endow benefits to the plant in terms of drought resistance and other types of vigor and growth. And so we decided to understand that biology from scratch and to develop seeds that come pre-built with the bacteria inside them. And so now, without additional fertilizer or less fertilizer, less water, you can get the same yields or you can get better yields by having these endosymbiont enhanced seeds. So that's a company that's actually commercializing this technology. We have another company using CRISPR to not put genes in, but just to eliminate certain genes so that we can breed plants that are much better and much more vigorous and efficient. And that's proving to be exceptionally powerful. It's almost like breeding, what we do in normal breeding processes over millennia, but accelerated on the order of years, just a couple of years, to get better and better traits into a broader set of very useful crop plants. So those are just two examples, but we have others. And a lot of times, I should add, the technologies we invent on the therapeutic side end up inspiring technologies on the ag side and the sustainability side. So the microbe story that I just told you, the predecessor to that was a company called Ceres that had understood that the gut microbiome could be really beneficial, created a pill to fight against C. difficile infection in the hospital. And now that's on the market, but that was the inspiration for us to think about plants. And so we do that all the time, where we cross-pollinate, no pun intended, between the two worlds.
No, and also all the technological stack, like these autonomous labs, these bioinformatics are going to help also to improve these kind of solutions besides the health industry, no? So
yeah, maybe the only difference you'll see is a greenhouse in one case, and maybe some more cell-based assays on the other side, or mouse facilities on the other side. But they're essentially, that's the end of the road. Everything up to that is exactly what you said.
Until we don't need a plant to synthesize a protein or whatever, no? So, and today this forum is about venture capital, it's about private equity, and we used to work with very straightforward models, no? So we have LPs, we have GPs, as a 220 in general, no? But you work in a total different model and how you deploy your money and how you operate. How is a little bit, if you can tell us technical, how you organize this process?
Yeah, so we've brought all of that under one roof, if you will. So we have scientist entrepreneurs who are employees, like myself. So our team of scientist entrepreneurs is about 150. We have about 150 people that support the companies we create from a general and administrative standpoint, intellectual property, computer technology, machine learning, hiring, human resources, and all that support staff. We also have a drug development arm at Flagship of about 150 people who can prepare for clinical trials and conduct clinical trials. And we have the capital. And we've raised the capital very similar to a VC, but that capital is used to do the activities that I described, the invention, prototyping, and scaling of the company. We realized that it's a unique way of doing venture creation. Unlike going out and looking for investments, we can look for innovation. We can actually create innovation. We file patents. So we file about 400 patents every year that have us as the inventors on them. And we can license in technology when needed. And we can essentially govern the destiny of the platforms in a much more creative and agile way to endow the companies with optionality, endow the companies with the care and feeding that only a founder can actually put into it, while also bringing in the money and the long view that this might take longer than expected. This might require more vision, it might require more patience, it might require much more agility. And so I think by having the money and the founders together as opposed to separate, it helps with that cycle, that virtuous cycle of resiliency and bigger vision. I mean, Modera would not have been created, which is a company we invented and built, had it not been for that virtuous model of capital, ideation, and stewardship of that investment.
So this is, and we are running out of time, so in 1 minute, what do you envision for the future? You're expanding, this model is so unique in these volatile moments of the world that we need creativity, we need boldness to think about new models, business models, to really bring the new stuff that we need. What you're thinking about your future, the Flagship future? No?
Well, like I said, I think AI is going to be very disruptive and continue to be part and parcel of what we do. I don't think it's a trend and then we're going to move on to something else. AI and biology are going to be married. It's going to be completely intermingled, and it's going to be permanent. That's going to be a permanent marriage long into the future. And I think what Flagship is thinking about is not only creating bioplatforms, but then accelerating product development from those bioplatforms. Because that's one thing that we somewhat outsourced to the ecosystem, where we would get a technology up to a certain point, maybe take one drug forward from our company or one agricultural product forward. But we've been relying on the pharmaceutical industry and large ag to potentially take on those innovations and turn them into products. Well, we will continue to do that. But we have enough capital and we have the expertise to actually drive more programs and products forward. And we think we can attract even more capital to do that. So that's been one sort of new direction that we've been thinking about, expanding into actually product development from the platforms in a much more deliberate and expanded way.
Okay, Avak, thank you very much. We are running out of time. Very nice conversation, and thank you very much again to be
Thank
here.
you. Gracias.